Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Quick Cast. We are just about through our series of individual strengths videos, and today we're going to do arranger. And of course, this is my highest executing strength, and I talk about that a lot. It's also the lowest or the least common executing strength among writers. And so I'm so excited to get to have the authors on that we have today because they're such great examples of great arranger in action. And so let's first talk to Terry and Becca, and then we are going to shift all the way back to the past and hear the authors on the Author Talk Show. And then I'll see you again right at the end. So take it away, Terry and Becca.
Not mimics, but it has other feels and actions that are common to other strengths. Like I can see maximizer in it, I can see activator in it, I can see adaptability in it, I can
strategic,
see
achiever.
Strategic, so much strategic in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like as I'm reading that, and even we were just talking about command. Like command wants to deal with chaos and get rid of it. Arranger loves chaos. It thrives the more chaos there is, but it also likes to bring order from that, right? It likes to take,
Mm-hmm.
I think of it as a juggler. And for me, arranger is the juggler that can juggle more balls than anybody else can, seemingly effortlessly, right? I can always see juggler going, throw me another ball, throw me another ball. It's like, what? Are you sure? I don't even know how to throw it. Just throw it. I'll figure it in. And we've got to see arranger in work a lot because you have arranger. One of my friends has arranger, and I see it in the adaptability, and I can see it when I look back in the chaos of all of the decisions that they've made, right? It almost seeks out. And when I say maximizer, it's because it sees a plan and then it's like, well, no, it could be better if we switched it around. It could be better if we switched it around. It fiddles, right? It's the fiddler, which can be very, very fun for it. Very, very interesting for other people, right? And we see it thankfully in the BFA, we see it, right? You can see how you'll come to us with a plan and then we'll say, wait a minute, that's not the plan we were expecting. You go, right, slight change, but we're going live, right? How are we doing with that? Which is great. Definitely arranger is for sure your top executing strength, for sure. And
100%. And I guess I used to see it more in my old jobs because one of the things we'll talk about in the Author Talk Show is that arranger is the least common executing strength among writers. And part of the reason for that is because like when I was in my arranger heyday and I was like working at a children's theater and I was also I was a music director at a church. And so I had all of these moving parts at all times and everything was always going around me. And I was the person who was directing and moving everything. So like I got to be in that space as an arranger where I was really at my best in that strength, but I didn't have some of the other strengths I have weren't as happy. But arranger was just so happy because like what Terry was saying about juggling, in my head, I would see the juggling not as balls, but of little systems. So like the system of, putting on this production and the system of doing this fundraiser and the system of doing this big event were all being juggled all the time. And then inside each of those systems was another set of juggling, right? It was like, and I was so happy doing all of that and being so busy. So when people ask me now, like, how do you get so much done without being like a super dominant achiever? I'm always like, let me talk to you about my arranger brain and what it's like inside an arranger head, because it's so different from like inaction or stasis feels like an open spot to fill.
Right. Yes.
At all times.
Oh my goodness, yes. Boy, does it ever. It's so comfortable with lots of moving parts in it. And I think of it too macro, micro. It always sees space. Always there's more space to fill and things. Because of that, I think too, it's said in the training that arranger works very effectively with others, because when you just listen to Becca's ideas about systems are macro. They can't work by, like, you can always envision doing more than you can do. And And so you're grabbing people to help you along with doing this and doing that. I think it's actually a strength in management or leading.
Oh, huge.
Because you can show people what the vision is, so there's less confusion that way. Then you'll empower them to do it. Some talents don't want to give responsibility out or get others involved, but a ranger definitely is happy to get others involved. And I think of it also a lot like activator. I think you and I share this from different points, right? My activator and your ranger act in similar ways. It likes to get things going, likes the motion and the movement going, which is very, very powerful.
Yeah, it's funny.
Too, right? Very flexible.
It's flexible. So when I was a music director, I would regularly get changes thrown at me in the middle of like a production or an event or a service. And I loved it. I thrived on it because it was the ability to take all of the moving parts of the team or the band or the play and make them work with this new information. But it was also because on some level I had anticipated what would have to happen if everything changed. But if you were to say, because this has happened to me a couple of times because my adaptability is so low, if you were to say, let's completely do like, let's cancel something, for instance, I lose my mind. Yeah. Because it's like, but we planned to do, like, we planned, this is how it's supposed to happen. We can make this work. And I keep trying to flex us into making it work, as opposed to the adaptability, which would be like, okay, like whatever we're going to do is what we're going to do. Right. It's fine.
It's so funny. I was going to say that because we both have high strategic and then I see the differences in the others, because I will often
adaptability
say to
and
you,
ranger,
scrap it. And you'll never do it. And I know you won't now, but it's also, when I think of it from an ranger point of view, right? For me, like a ranger sees all of those pieces, and a ranger is willing to say, one doesn't work, we don't have to get rid of everything. We can just make it do this or that or the other. So I think it's a ranger that wants to, so it can be very flexible within a system. But as far as getting rid of the entire system and starting again or doing something,
it's so hard.
It's a big struggle for that.
It's very hard.
And a great example of the nuances of how some talents are similar. They want to do the same things for different reasons, and how those different reasons can come in and be the roadblock or the thing that really differentiates how you move forward.
Because in the middle of an event, you might look at Terry's adaptability and Becca's a ranger, and in the middle of an event, they would seem very similar.
Yes.
Because I will be honest, like that, I was so shocked to not have adaptability in my top 10 when I took the test the first time, because it's one of the things that I prized myself on being able to do in the middle of something, is just completely take in whatever is happening and create a new system around whatever has just changed. And I was so shocked to not have adaptability. And yet when I see Terry's or Susan's adaptability, and I see the actual difference between like systemic flexibility versus just complete adaptation, they are totally different. Yeah. So if you were to take, just as an example, if the two of us were to adapt a screenplay, and we were to take an original source novel and adapt the screenplay, adaptability would be so comfortable changing the story completely away from what had been written in the novel, because it would be about what's the best form for the format, right? And a ranger is so interested in maintaining the system and being flexible within the system. It would be more likely to change a character or a motivation or something to try to keep the structure of the system in place. And that's why a lot of Rangers tend to be good at things like event planning and party planning and managing. Like a lot of Rangers are really great managers, because if you think about like a team of 15 people who all rely on that income, is there a way for us to move responsibilities around and move people to different places on the team and maintain everyone's stability, but also get all the work done? And so Rangers really thrive in situations where they can take existing parts and make them into the maximum productivity. It's really the reason why I was originally so attracted to productivity coaching, is because I can listen to someone, and my Ranger brain is like, okay, we move this here, we do that different, this goes out, that comes in, et cetera, et cetera. But we maintain the majority of the system. And it's why we do systemic productivity instead of tactical productivity. It's just like this strength is responsible for the difference in our business. It's not just individualization, it's also a ranger.
And explain for everyone your difference between systemic and tactical while we're here.
So tactical productivity is this system should work for everyone. This is the best system. So I find the best strategic tactic, like let's say habit create, tiny habits, atomic habits is a great example. Atomic habits doesn't work for everybody because not everyone has a system that can assimilate habitual, like habit creation or habit formation. So for me, I'm always looking at what does your system tolerate? And is there a way to get the same outcome, to get the same maximum productivity out of that system without expecting me to have an ability that I don't have? So tactical productivity ignores systems completely, even though it wouldn't. People who are tactical productivity people wouldn't admit that they do that, but they do. Like from an arranger perspective, that's why we can get 100% effective, is because we assume that everybody's system is different and we treat every single person as though they are a different set of systems.
Let me ask you a fun question for people who might have a ranger and struggle with certain things. I'm going to talk only to a ranger. To a ranger in its purest form, here's the question. Is there ever anything that cannot be changed or improved and made better?
No.
Right. No, which means if you,
no.
we talk about, there's certain talents, we talk about this, right? Look how uncomfortable she gets. No, strategic, restorative, some of these strengths when people are getting stuck saying, I keep going over and over and doing rewrites or redrafts on my stuff, I can't stop. What's the issue? If you have a ranger, look at it, because if you're asking how is this perfect, a ranger will never admit that it's perfect. You can always find something to arrange. And you just saw the very uncomfortable no. Same with strategic, right? There's no, or ideation. There's nothing, we can't come up with a new answer for stuff. But yeah, I think that's an important point for people who are watching this, that if you do have a ranger, you're going to always feel that you can make improvements to your script, or that you can always do something. So that's something to be very aware of.
Yeah, especially when you're talking,
because it hates there's no such thing as good enough, right? There's always something that can be tweaked.
Yeah, there's some of that. There's also, I think, like, because systems change so subtly, that sometimes the reason you can tweak something is because you've already tweaked something else and it changed everything else. So like, arrangers are big systemic thinkers, even if some of them don't realize that they do this. But it's one of the reasons that we see a lot of arrangers either in management, or in event planning, or in like, some version of like actually physically arranging things, is because they're so aware all the time of how little changes affect everything else. Like how in a room, if I change where a chair is situated, I've just changed the traffic flow of the entire room. And so I may need to move this thing and that thing and that thing in addition to what I just did. And then if I move all those things, I have to go back and look again, like, is this the best way for this all to be arranged? It's really interesting because I really think this is one of the reasons why there are fewer arrangers, like really dominant arrangers in writing. And everyone that I know who is an arranger has some kind of background, either in corporate work or entrepreneurial work or something like that, where they got to work in these systems that have giant, implications. And because that's where arranger's really at its best. And so taking a ranger and being able to apply it to your writing is one piece. But then additionally, knowing that the higher you are an arranger, the more likely you're going to be to, have other things that are around you that are being arranged or need arrangement, or, where you can have that kind of fun, I guess.
Here's a fun arranger story. I think this is a good arranger story. I guarantee this guy was an arranger. I worked at a company and we did a lot of assembly of product. We bring in the raw product and assemble it as parts and then ship it out. And 85% of our business was shipped next day. Pretty big deal. They were doing, I don't know, tens of millions of dollars a year through there. And we went to this, we got a tour. We went to the head office and got a tour. And the guy said, he took us through the place, and he said, he'd been on board for like 4 months. He said, here's what we did. This used to be this way. I turned the table this way. It saved 3 steps from here to there. And that saved actually 7 seconds. And then he took us to the next one and the next one, the next one. And at the end, I said, Jerry, I got to tell you, I'm not impressed. He goes, what are you talking about? I go, you've saved what, like 5-10 minutes? He goes, 12.7 minutes. I went, okay, easy. And I said, how's that a big deal? He said, the flow improved everything. It's going to, and he had already numbers. It stress injuries
Reduce
had gone
stress.
down from turning and picking up stuff. Speed of output had gone up. The number of orders they replaced 2 people to 1 people in some stations. He had literally in 3 months or 4 months saved the company tens of thousands of dollars from 12 minutes and 7 seconds or whatever it was. But that to me feels very, very Arranger.
And so Arranger.
And boy,
I got so happy, right? Just listening to that story. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so incredible. Like the 4 of us were talking about how uncommon Arranger is in writers. And I know those of you who are high Arranger and have been waiting for this video, you realize that it's almost the last video. And some of that was being able to articulate how Arranger works in writers, because it's really hard to do until I have kind of a critical mass in my head of making sure that I have represented enough Arrangers to know for sure, like, this is how it works. But the other piece is because it's less common, fewer people ask for it. And so we have waited almost until the very last minute to talk about Arranger, which by the way is the most Arranger thing ever, because Arranger is very like, let's just move all these things around and let's get everything in the right place for everyone, right? Like always taking into account what everyone needs. And the other thing we were talking about, which we will cover again, is how many different strengths Arranger has an overlap with. So there are elements of Arranger that feel very achievery because they tend to have very big plates and they can do a lot of things. There are elements of Arranger that feel very like adaptability. And so it's very flexible and it tends to be able to maybe not go with the flow in a surprise way, but go with the flow in a very flexible kind of intuitive, knowing, let's keep everybody moving forward kind of way. It is an execution strength. And then it also has a maximizer sort of overlap, which is let's do this in the best way, the most efficient way. Like it kind of has a little strategic maximizer feel to it. But again, it is an executing strength. So all of those strengths are kind of what I would consider the equivalent of Arranger in the other domains. But Arranger is very, very similar to other strengths. So that's the other reason we haven't done as much talking about Arranger yet, because I need to make sure we have knowledge of those other pieces so that we can differentiate, kind of from them. So Arranger is the flexible executing strength. It is the most, what I would consider to be big plate executing strength. It is the strength we tend to see with the biggest plates. I know all the achievers are going to get antsy about that because we always say achievers have the biggest plate. But because Arrangers have such a flexibility, like we were joking at the beginning, it's common for Arrangers to have multiple jobs at the same time, or to be doing all of the projects or have all of the volunteer work or whatever, because there's such that rising to the challenge of being able to execute many things. So the very first thing I want us to do as Arranger writers is obviously introduce ourselves. I'd love to hear who you are and what you write. And then tell me, how do you see your Arranger working in your life? And Janny, let's start with you. So who are you and what do you write and how do you see your Arranger?
Hi, I'm Becca. And everyone. I'm Johnny. I write as JL Lora. I write romantic suspense and contemporary, semi-contemporary. Every book for me is completely different. And I think that that's part of my Arranger, because I try to tailor my book to what my writing to what my situation is. So let's say if I have like if it's high stress at my job and I have something else and I have 5, 6, 7 appointments, like I'm going to arrange my writing somewhere in there and it's going to get done. And if in my mind today, I said, I'm going to write those, let's say 2,000 words, they're going to get written, and they're going to get written because I'm going to find a way. Because to me, and I feel like it's not the healthiest thing, but the more chaotic things are, the more I'm like, this is my life.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. I love that so much. Ainsley, what about you?
Okay, my name is Ainsley St. Like Jenny, I write contemporary romance and romantic suspense. I'm the author of 25 books. And I think in my writing life, it comes forth in that I publish 5 books a year, right? So I'm constantly marketing, writing, and editing all at the same time, on top of being a mother.
In addition to, yeah.
Yeah. I have a consulting company that I can't get any of my employees to take. So I have 9 employees and it's something else. My kids are active in 1,000 activities because they have an overactive mom. And I really have to hold myself back from volunteering stuff. They'll say, oh, we need somebody to come at lunchtime. And I'm like, oh, I could do that. No, slow down.
Because you see the opening, right? You're
right.
like, oh, there's an open hour there. I could do that.
I can fit that in. And then I'm like, well, maybe I need to be better. And I'm also high achiever. So that means my plate is huge.
Yeah.
And, I read 200 books a year and I'm an insomniac, and all of those things all play into all of this.
Yes.
So.
Yes. And it's interesting too, because we have the maximizer arranger, Johnny, and then we have the achiever arranger, and then we also have an adaptability arranger. So we kind of have all of the overlaps with everybody, which of course is the most arranger thing that I've done all day, but yeah. Bren, what about you?
My name is Bren Bryant, and I write Regency historical romance and romantic comedy screenplays, because I can't just do one type of thing.
Yes.
And in my non-writing life, I am an event manager. And I see a ranger in my writing life, definitely in my process. Because when I talk to my other writer friends about my process, they're terrified of it because it seems highly chaotic. But because I write multiple books at the same time in the same series, and I'm jumping in at different places in different books, because I don't want to waste time staring at a blank page. So if something from book 2, chapter 4 is clear to me today, then that's what I'm going to write. And I'm going to trust that I have the ability to tie it all together at the end, because that's what we're good at, putting things together.
Yes. Yes. In fact, it's so funny. Has anybody else done event management? Yeah. As an arranger, the most interesting piece about writing and arrangers is that writing has to be something an arranger does. It's much, much harder for an arranger to only be a writer, like to just kind of have that focus, like this is the only thing that I'm going to do, because there just aren't enough moving parts to the writing world, unless you're like running a giant writing company and, doing a lot of things, but there aren't enough things to fill the open hours with. And arrangers will absolutely look. It's so funny, Ainsley, when you were like, could I do that at lunch? I literally saw in my head that little empty slot on the calendar that would be like, I can fit something in there. Like I could do something in that place, right?
And they need me. And they need me. And I can, no one else is volunteering and they need me.
Yes.
It's like when Ainsley was talking, all I keep thinking about somebody be like, hey, can you take me to the airport? And you'd be like, yes, I can.
Yeah, I'll fit that in right here. Can we leave at 10:15? And then we'll leave at 10:15. The other thing that was awesome, by the way, is that everyone was early for the recording. Like all of us were early for the recording. And I was like, that's the first time that's ever happened before, because arrangers know. Right. Like, and arrangers know this. This is so you instinctively understand. If you're late, I will fill that time with other things. Like as an arranger, immediately, if somebody is late, I'm like, I have 5 minutes. Like I need to do, you know what I mean? Because there's so much of I want to get as much out of the time that I can get into. But then of course, the other part of a ranger is you can very quickly task switch and almost feel like it's almost like jumping from train track to train track, where like I'm going in this direction and then I jump over here and we go this far and then I jump back here and we go here, and I think of that in my head that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love this strength so much. It's hard for me not to just be like, oh, this is so great, because of course that what several of us have mentioned also about like doing multiple things means I have to have multiple, almost like calendar spots or slots in my head that I can see how all these things can arrange themselves together, which is why we make good event managers, is because you can think about what's going on in that wing and that wing and that wing and that wing all at the same time, and know in your head who's in each room at which place and who needs what and does everyone have everything, right? So it's a very high capacity. It's why the metaphor is the maestro, right? I don't know if any of you have ever read orchestral scores, but you'll have about 8 measures per page because there's 27 different instruments that the maestro has to follow at one time. So they're conscious of like every single person who's playing an instrument for 8 measures. And you have to know how to cue everyone and who needs to see what and how we make all of this into one cohesive thing. And I got a little excited just thinking about that, because as an arranger, I'm like, yes, this is my most dominant execution strength. And you can tell because I get excited about this. But because a ranger is so flexible, but also so active, like wanting to get a lot done, we do see some patterns in how writing works. But I'm interested to hear, because you've talked just a little bit about it so far, how do you see this in your writing? Either like Bren was saying, how you see it in your process, or do you actually see it in your writing? Like Bren, are you writing multiple books in the same world at the same time? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And even inside those, and this even goes back to when I was a journalism student, and then my first career was journalism. I had a really hard time with like the inverted pyramid, where you chunk all the important stuff at the top and then you just kind of peter off. All of my stuff, especially my features, they start at the beginning and they just flow to the end. And flow, and the flow of words and the flow of the story is such a big thing. So my editor would just give it back to me and say, look, I need it to be 200 words shorter. Can you cut it? Because they couldn't just chop off the ending, because the ending, it all flowed together really nicely. So it's about the flow of scene into scene, and just the action flows, the words flow, everything just kind of has to have this like rhythm to it. At least that's how it feels for me, for sure.
Yeah. Ainsley, what about you? How do you see this in your writing?
Well, I think having the same projects, but moving at the same time. But then, on top of that, adjacent to that, I guess, really is that I really wanted to be on a list, right? Like everybody else, I want to chase a list. And nobody was asking me to be on a list. And so I decided as an arranger, I would create my own group. And, and doing things like that, that's still in the writing, and doing all of those pieces. I reached out to, not everybody I asked was interested, but I picked people in my genre, people in, I'm a Kindle Unlimited author. I picked, I have $1 million authors, I have mid-level authors, and I have starting authors. And I had pulled all of these people together because I wanted balance, all of those pieces together. And we're chasing a list. And, I've got a Slack group, I've got, and I'm constantly, let's help promote, let's, on top of every day I write 2,000 words every day, and I am constantly thinking ahead. So I'm dropping Easter eggs in my writing for it to either to come out in that book or maybe into the next book. And I have series arcs and book arcs, and it's a lot of moving pieces all at the same time. So there's two sides to that for me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's also really common, I wanted to say, because you're both achiever and arranger, to have kind of that double execution push, right? Like really, really liking to get things done.
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of arrangers will resonate with some of the way we talk to achievers, because they're so like, I want to get a lot done. I really like to be busy, but a different way busy. Arrangers want to be busy in an efficient way, in an effective way. And so a lot of arranger achievers are very conscious of like, is this the best use of my time? Do I need to be checking my email 7 times a day, or could I check it 4 times a day? Like those kinds of things, right? Just really, really interesting, the overlaps. And Gianni, how about you? How do you see this in your writing?
First, I want to say my people. You guys are my people, definitely. When Bren said, when she spoke about writing 2 books, that is me. I feel better, and like that's something I forgot for a while. I feel better when I have one hand on each pot. Like I feel so much better, and like I'm doing that right now. And like a lot of the times, I've done that. Like I'll be writing a book, and I know the idea pops up, and I have to, because it's like a waiting room. That's the way I also described it before.
Yes.
Where that voice is talking, and they're like, write my story, write my story, write my story. But I'm doing this, but I'm doing this. So I'm like, when there's a strong one, I have to honor that. So I have to like write these 2 books at a time, because if no, I'm never going to write this one, because this one's bothering me so much.
Yes.
So a lot of people, like a lot of my author friends are like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I can't explain it. It just happens.
It's totally an arranger thing. And it's funny because if you think about like the maestro page, right? All of those voices in your head, or all the things that you have to do, are sort of like those different instruments where like if somebody's playing, you go to where they're playing. You don't try to force them into a different like mode. You do it the way it's supposed to be done. And I think this is part of why like I'm just yes, I agree. My people, like so much so that I'm just like, let's just talk about arranger for like the next 7 hours, because it's so different. So there's advice that gets tossed out all the time that is, if you do one thing in one direction, you'll be more efficient and effective than doing 5 things in 5 directions, which for most people is true. For arrangers, it's the opposite of truth. So like if I were to try to force myself to only do one thing, I mean, first of all, I think all of us would say like you would go crazy and then just throw everything back on the plate again. Like I couldn't do it for very long. But what you're describing about like working because it's pressure and then switching and working because there's other pressure is exactly what arranger is good at. It's good at that switching back and forth and knowing who's talking and knowing what's important to do. It's interesting because arranger is my most dominant executing strength. And the way I see it in my writing is that in every genre I write, all of my books and series happen at the same time. So like I have this one particular series that's finished where we had, I think, 4 different series that all happened in about the same week of time. And so it'd be like, this week in that series in this location, and then this week in that series in that location. And they literally all interwove all the time. And you would see characters like Ainsley was mentioning, the Easter eggs, like you would see characters that would go in and out. And so the series I'm working on right now, I've been trying to do in like linear order, where it's like each book happens in order. And actually this morning, my co-writer who wrote the other series with me was like, why don't you just have them happening at the same time? I can tell that you want to. And I was like, oh, yes. Like it was like my arranger brain just needed to make them all more complicated in that way. And it's funny because it's almost the challenge, like you want to rise to meet that challenge as an arranger. Now I bet all of us are like, well, I'm going to write more books at the same time, because if I had more books going, then I could be even more efficient, which is true. It is true. Like, not for everybody, but for arrangers, 100%. 100%, because you can switch back and forth very quickly and be fully present and know exactly where you are and not need a ramp to get back into the story. It is an unbelievable ability. Like, it's the coolest. I love it so much.
Well, you know, it's interesting that when you said about the ramp into another story, because everybody says, like I remember I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was like, no. And a few people have said this, like, oh, I have to read where I was before. I have to read the chapter before and then get in. I'm like, am I weird? Like, like that's not me. I can just like jump, like keep on going. And the other thing is the part where the rewriting, I don't know about Ainsley and Bren, but I'm not necessarily a rewriter. Like, no, like a start all over again. Like, if people give you feedback and you, like, a lot of people are like, I'm just going to write my first chapter again. I'm like, nah, I wrote it like this for a reason. I'm fixing this one. And it just like ends up working for some reason. So
that's the most arranger thing ever. I love that. Like, did you hear that though? I'll fix it in this one. That's so arranger, because it's like, whatever happened, we're going to figure it out. Like, because that's the flexibility, right, of that arranger. I love that so much. I have to be really careful not to just sit here and be like, isn't this a great strength, you guys? Isn't this so amazing? Because I just love it. So let's talk a little bit about either our marketing or business decisions. And let's start with Ainsley. When you look at the way that you market or the way that you make business choices, how do you see arranger there?
Oh, well, I look at it, I write, each of my books are 100,000 words. So, you know, I write big books, and they're complicated. So when it comes to marketing and things like that, I have to be really careful, because I do want them to be, you know, I want people to feel like they can jump in at certain points, but at the same time, you know, I have a series arc, and, you know, can they come in at the last book? Well, yeah, but then they miss the beginning. And, you know, it's all of that nuance of the complication that I add to it. My readers love it. And my readers love seeing other characters come in. And I even have, as I started thinking about this, I have arranger characters in my books, right? They're in there. You know, I have one that has been in all 25 books. Only one has been about her, but she's in all 20, because she's an arranger.
She's doing it all.
She does. She pulls people in. You know, she has all these friends. You know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's kind of, I think that's the best way. And marketing wise, you know, I'm constantly looking at opportunities and working on and what works, right? But so I do send out what I'm not good at. I'm very good at, and that's comes from a different skill. But as the arranger part of me, I'm not quite ready to hand off all of my advertising, because I feel like I worked hard to master it. And so I hold on to that. And I probably will keep that, much to my new business managers that Becca made me hire. Yes. I'm blaming her.
Yes. Although I will say, like, that is a very arranger thing of seeing that someone has a talent for something. And so I know if I give it to them, I can kind of put it out of my mind and not think about it. And I do hear that achiever of like, I'm good at this. I want to keep doing it. I think that's a good thing, actually. Like, maybe the best example of arranger is that manager who knows what everyone is good at and lets everyone do exactly what they're good at, and then lets them just do the job and not like micromanage them, because we know how inefficient micromanaging is, right? And that's a super peak arranger. And actually, one of the reasons I think arrangers would do well in, like, as they get bigger, in the indie world. So like with Ainsley, as your business has grown, like you have the opportunity to bring on people and then arrange all of those people and make all of them do their best work while you do your best work. So like every time you kind of level up to that next spot, you get even more capacity to do the arranger part of that, that strength set, even though like it doesn't necessarily require a ranger to get there. But man, arrangers, when they're in that spot, are just at the top of their game. It's really cool. Yeah, I love that. Bren, what about you?
I think it's just about, for me, it's being mindful of like time and my what I have available. Because to me, my two most important resources are time and energy. And I want to make sure that I'm utilizing those the absolute best way I can. I don't have a problem with thinking about, okay, let's let somebody who's an expert at this do this. And I mean, a ranger likes to control things, but I also know that if I'm going to spend 4 hours doing something and somebody else is better at it, and it's going to save me 4 hours, then it's like gone,
Yes.
There can kind of be almost like a brutal efficiency to it.
Yes.
To just be able to go, nope, that's not going to work. The time doesn't work. It takes too much. I'm done. And I will spend money to save time.
Yep.
Because I can make money.
Same.
I can't make time.
Right. Yep. 100% agree. It's interesting too, because the shifting of like I'm going to give this to you and you're going to do it. If I know they're competent as an arranger, I stop thinking about it. Like it almost becomes just not my job anymore, which is the real kind of upside of a ranger when you're managing other people, is if you know you're hiring competent people, then you don't have to think about that stuff anymore. And it's so nice. It's so nice. Johnny, what about you?
I'm laughing a little bit because so I have a VA, and she does a lot of my marketing. I do some parts of it, because when I get into like making teasers and things like that, I fall down the rabbit hole. I really do. I'll spend 4 hours, but the part that kind of makes me laugh is because I keep thinking yesterday, I was like, am I going to fit in like with the other arrangers? And I was like, okay, I do. But the interesting thing is, in the beginning, I was very controlling when it came to it. I was like, these are my graphics. I'm making my graphics. This is what you got. I have them all. I have a vision and everything. And it takes like 1 second. It took 1 second. She wrote one newsletter. I think it was like a couple of years ago. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I've been working with her since like 2017. And she wrote it. And for a split second, I was like, did I write this? Because it's like she did it in my voice, and it's all of a sudden I'm there. I'm at the point where I'm like, do it, just write it. She just runs it by me. I look at it. Yeah, I'm like, good, let's move on.
I love that.
But yeah, like it took a while, but like I guess there's light at the end of the tunnel. We can get to that part when we like, let's let the competent people. And Bren says something that's like, that needs to be sold in plaques and frame pictures and everything about, you can make more money, but you can make more time. Like that's an amazing phrase, and that's so true. Like words to live by. So
yeah. And that's the most arranger thing ever too, right? Because you think of the metaphor Gallup always used to use, which I thought was interesting. And as a person who rode buses as a kid, I never resonated with it, because being in the right seat on the bus never made sense to me. But that phrase that gets used about like putting the right people in the right seats on the bus, assuming that the bus has some kind of purpose, I guess, that we're all doing jobs on that bus. I don't know where that came from, but that is the metaphor Gallup always used to use. And I prefer the conductor metaphor, because I always think of like in the symphony, you want the best players in the first chairs, because you can trust them to lead their section. And then all I really have to do is lead that one person and know that they know how to work with their people. And I always feel like that is the most efficiency oriented action that you could take, is having really excellent people who lead people. Also, I want to say, point out something that Ainsley mentioned, which I thought was the most arranger thing ever, is I have a series arc, and also like people should be able to, and I'm putting air quotes around should, come in at any book. But dang it, as an arranger, I create the series so that they come in at book one. Like I create that experience of them going through the arc so that they come in at book one. And I've started being a little more like embracing this a little bit more and saying like, don't come in those later books, you guys. Like if you pick this book up somewhere, go start from the beginning. Because as an arranger, I curate that experience for you from moment one. And I want you to get in the funnel and not just do what you want, which is, you know, people don't like being told what to do, but like, honestly, just read book one, you guys.
I will say though, that I have an 85+% read-through rate.
Yes.
You know, because of all of that.
Yep.
You know, and I'm obviously very proud of my read-through rate.
Yeah.
But, you know, but that does loop it all together. And
yeah, I mean, if you've ever been to an event before where you felt like the event was curated, where like someone thought about how do you walk in the door? How do you experience this? Like my sister's wedding was like this. The event organizer was unbelievable. Like you just walk in the door and you felt like you knew exactly where to go. Nobody had to direct you. It was so intuitive. It was arranged really well. You know, everything flowed really well. And we're using all of the arranger words, right, to talk about this stuff. But as a writer, I feel like I do the same thing with the way that I work through series or the way that I work through arcs or something like that. And that's something not everyone can do. So like those of us who are capable of that, like we need to take advantage of that and lean into it and think about, okay, how do I then arrange everything in my platform or arrange everything in my funnel to take advantage of this very curated experience that I create as the event manager of my books, basically, right? Like the arranger of my books, which again, not everyone will do, and it doesn't need to be that way. But like in Ainsley's case, it does not surprise me to hear a high read-through rate when you take the time to really arrange the things in that way, even if you're not doing it intentionally, like even if it just happens intuitively, because of course, like arranger is, in my opinion, is the most intuitive executing strength that there is. And so it's not surprising that all of us were talking before we started recording and are all intuitive writers, right? Because like that's what arrangers do. We watch and curate and manage and watch and arrange and manage.
Adapt.
Yep.
Yeah, fill the gaps.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, you guys, I love this strength so much.
Yeah, it's funny because I think arranger is probably one of the reasons why I'm okay not getting on TikTok and not getting on some social media things, because first of all, it's a beautiful gatekeeper for FOMO, because you're like, do I want to commit the time to that? Do I want to commit the energy to that? But when you talk about the curation aspect, I can't curate TikTok the way that I can curate it used to be much easier to curate how things came to you on Facebook or how things came to you on Twitter. And the more that they mix up their algorithm, the less I feel like going there, because I can't get what I want, how I want it, and then just be done with it. And I find that it's making me less and less interested in social media as a consumer. And I know that's not like how the general population is responding, but I feel like it's my arranger going, well, if I can't curate this, what's the point of it? Why am I going to give it my time?
Yeah, I agree. And I think being more conscious of the fact, and I love that Janny pointed out that phrase about you can't make more money, make more time, but you can make more money. Because that's actually one of the reasons why I do write better, faster the way that I do. Because I'm like, FOMO is a real thing. And if you don't acknowledge that you're going to miss out on a lot of stuff, then you'll always be trying to chase that fear instead of acknowledging, yeah, I have limited time. I have limited attention. I can't do everything. As much as I want to do as much as I can, I instinctively know that I can't do everything. So the way we created Write Better, Faster, Strengths for Writers, like everything really, it is an arranger experience where it's like, do you need to be doing that? 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 Because as much as possible, I want to get people funneled toward only the stuff that's really going to make them the most effective that they can be. And most people are not the most effective they can be when they're doing things like this is what everyone's doing right now, because we're primarily just chasing the FOMO, which is, you know, not my favorite thing in the world. I don't like FOMO, and if you could give just one piece, like one tip to rule them all to the arrangers out there, what would you say? Other than that, you can make more money, but you can't make more time, which was, let's face it, probably the thing that I will be like, that's going on my wall.
Well, it's what you say all the time. Question the premise. The beautiful thing about Arranger is we are hardwired to build systems, and you will hear everyone tell you, do it like this, do it like this, do it like this. And you will break yourself trying to do it like someone who doesn't have the strengths that you have, you know? So question that, take the good pieces, the things that light you up, the things that you intuitively respond to, build your own system. It's your superpower, you know? That's my advice.
Yeah. Johnny, what about you?
So I'm going to also, I loved everything Bren said, but I'm going to also go with a quote from you. And I think that the one thing that helped me the most when we were doing our one-on-ones and we were taking the class, what I took the most out of the class is that you gave me permission to be me. And like you were like, embrace it. So embrace yourself. Like Bren said, don't try to break the rules, try to be like somebody else. Like I remember when people were like, plot, you have to plot. And sometimes I have plotted that I have books that I run through all the methods. Like but there's some I just write by the seat of my pants. And like to me, it's like adapt to whatever you're writing. If your book calls you to just write it, you can run all that later, make sure that you're hitting all your points, but just write in the natural way that it comes to you. Just like be organic, be good to you, and embrace yourself.
I love that. Yeah. Ainsley, what about you?
It's important as we go through all of this to find your sweet spot, play to it, and set yourself up with incentives. You know, go through and, you know, whether it's, you know, that Calgon moment where you're going to take a bath without your children, or, you know, a mani-pedi, or, you know, you have $200 to spend. Set goals that make it, you know, so that as you achieve them, you also have, maybe that's part achiever in me, wanting to set those goals and then reward myself. But I think we all need to, you know, particularly if you're a high arranger, your plate's big and you probably put yourself last. And so the one thing you have to do is find your sweet spot, recognize that, but do things to move yourself up from maybe not last, but certainly before, you know, the Amazon delivery guy, although he is really important.
Yes. To all of us. Even though I hear achiever threads in there, it's so arranger because it's about the longevity of your ability to do it, which I think when sometimes when you have either executing or influencing strengths that are so dominant that it's like, I just have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And yet arranger is always conscious of like, this is not a sustainable thing that we're doing here. So like if we continue to expend all of this resource and we don't fill that resource back up, then it is going to run out. Like we will not be able to continue to do this. And it's possible that that's from like, you know, years of like event management and theater and stuff like that, that I think that way. But I really think it's an arranger thing, because the arranger system of execution is all about, can I do it as long as possible in the best way possible? So like, I kind of want to hit that perfect range of pushing myself as hard as I can, but not refilling and not caring for myself, because then I will not be able to do it anymore. So that is like a super arranger, you know, piece of advice, because it's all about, we want you to be doing this for as long as you possibly can. And in order to do that, you can't just use up your resources all the time. Like, you have to refill them. I love that. I love that so much. Thank you so much to all the wonderful authors who were on the Arranger Quickcast with us today. We're so grateful for all of you sharing your Arrangerness with us. We hope that that has been helpful. And as always, I like to end with the reminder that strengths are intended to be developed. So part of what we want you to do with this information is to take it back, think about a process that if you need to find the action items. If you have a Ranger in your top 5, go to your full 34 report and look at the individualized definition. Underline what's you, highlight what's you, look for the action items and the blind spots and start working on those things. Because that's how we get to the better, faster place, right? Is we work intentionally to develop those strengths in a particular direction. So we hope you've enjoyed this quick cast, and we will see you next time for the next strength. Bye, everybody.